Nathaniel Hawthorne was the son of Captain Nathaniel Hawthorne and Elizabeth Manning Hawthorne. His father died in the sea at 1808, so his two sisters moved to his mother's family, the Mannings. He suffered an injury to his foot that kept him out of school for more than a year, which time of his love of books merged. He spent his early teens with her mother and sister at Sebago Lake in Raymond, Maine. He studied at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, where his classmates included Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the future writer, and the future president, Franklin Pierce. He graduated in 1825 and spent his 12 years living with his mother at Salem and writing. The first novel that he published is Pancho in 1828. Throughout the 1830s, he published more than 70 tales and sketches. He became engaged to Sophia Peabody in 1839 and decided to find a way to earn a better living than he could at writing. So he took a position as an inspector in the Boston House. They married in 1842 and moved to Old Man's in Massachusetts, where he earned his living as a writer. Their first child, Una, was born in 1844, and his second child, Julian, was born in 1846. In 1849, Nathaniel was removed from his post at the Custom House. Shocked and disillusioned, he channeled his energy into the Scarlet Letter, which was published in 1850, to popular and critical acclaim. The semi-autobiographical satirical essay, The Custom House, was included in the second printing as an introduction, because Hawthorne felt that the book was too dark and too short on its own. In the Custom House, he mentioned his great-great-grandfather, William Hawthorne, and his son, John. William was a Puritan and the Speaker of the House of Delegates in Massachusetts, while John is a judge in the infamous Salem witch trial of 1692. Hawthorne was both fascinated and repulsed by his forefather roles in country earliest days. His fascination in the period moved him to use a Puritan setting in many of his stories, such as Young Goodman Brown and The Minister Blackbeard. So much of his most famous works takes place in early colonial times that many readers mistakenly assumed that he was a Puritan himself. His success allowed him to focus on his writing. He spent the last years of his life suffering from gastrointestinal cancer and died in 1864 while in a short vacation in New Hampshire with Pierce.
Good day everyone, my name is Jean Andrew Gonzalez and I'm here to report some parts of our novel report titled The Scarlet Letter. It is written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. The date of first publication was around 1850. The setting in the story is in middle of the 17th century, Puritan Boston, Massachusetts. Puritan was a sect of Protestant Christians influenced by Calvinism, the idea that salvation is predestined. This is the setting of the Scarlet Letter. It is a community specifically to be religiously pure, which means being secularly strict. Secular means relating to the physical world and not the spiritual world. Point of view. The third person in the story is omniscient. He knows everything in the story and even describes it. This implies that he is much of a shower than a teller. He represents his own views on the action and events that is happening in the story. The protagonist, Hester Prynne. Hester is the book's protagonist and the wearer of the Scarlet Letter that gives the book its title. The letter, a patch of fabric in the shape of an A, signifies that Hester is an adulterer. As a young woman, Hester married an elderly scholar, Chillingworth, who sent her ahead to America to live but never followed her. While waiting for him, she had an affair with a Puritan minister named Dimmesdale, after which she gave birth to Pearl. Hester is passionate but also strong. She endures years of shame and scorn. She equals both her husband and her lover in her intelligence and thoughtfulness. Her alienation puts her in the position to make acute observation about the community, particularly about the treatment of women. Immortal quotes. Thomas Galdertine's own sunshine, I have none to give. It is said by Hester Prynne, page 121. The disease is what I seem to know, yet know it not. By Roger Chillingworth, page 161. The reason is not far to seek. It was my folly and thy weakness. Roger Chillingworth, page 85. It would fall away of its own nature or be transformed into something that should speak a different purport. Hester Prynne, page 202. Exchange this false life of thine for a true one, by Hester Prynne on page 237. On a field, Sybil, that a letter A goes, by Nathaniel Hawthorne, page 316. And that's the end. Thank you.
The climax of the story is when Arthur confessed his sin by tearing his shirt, revealing the red mark on his chest, in the scaffold where everyone can see him. Having the knowledge that he is the reverend of the said city, of the said town, it is very brave of him that he confessed his sin in front of everyone, and then after that, he died as soon as Pearl kissed his forehead. The conflicts of the story are: number 1, man versus society; number 2, man versus man; number 3, man versus himself; and number 4, man versus God. So number 1, man versus society. So the setting of the story is in a Puritan government or Puritan community. In a Puritan community, the laws of God and the laws of the people are being accounted the same. And they are being treated the same. So in implementing these rules, they are very strict. Having the knowledge that Hester Prynne committed a sin or a crime, she was really punished by having that letter A on her breast, by wearing that cloth with the scarlet letter A. So in the part of Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale, he also has a tattoo, scarlet letter A, on his chest, because he committed A means adultery, and with you having that kind of sign, it means that you're an adulterer, or you committed a sin. But not all of those people that is living in the Puritan community know about that sin of Arthur Dimmesdale. So that's man versus society. It is also the reason why Arthur Dimmesdale become a hypocrite, because he doesn't want to be judged by the people, having the knowledge that he is a living saint, and he doesn't want to ruin the reputation of him, and wants to have that reputation until he dies. He became a hypocrite. he hides that Scarlet Letter A on his chest. Number 2, the man versus man. So this conflict was clearly explained between Arthur Dimmesdale and then Roger Chillingworth. So we all know that these two are the lovers of Hester Prynne. Roger Chillingworth is the past husband of Hester Prynne, and Arthur Dimmesdale is the current lover of Hester Prynne, and whom Hester Prynne loves dearly. So this Roger Chillingworth came back after 2 years of not being seen. He plot revenge for Arthur Dimmesdale. And of course, Arthur Dimmesdale he doesn't know anything about Roger Chillingworth. He just have a knowledge about Roger Chillingworth at the end of the story, before he committed before he confessed his sin in the scaffold. And then the other one is between Hester Prynne and the governor. The governor is the one who judged Hester Prynne of being an adulterer, of committing the sin of being an adulterer. So the next one is man versus himself. So this conflict was clearly seen in Arthur Dimmesdale. He has a conflict with himself, between confessing his sin or keeping his reputation. So in that time, he's the most famous reverend in the Puritan government. So he really is respected, being as young the very young, or the youngest reverend, with such a dignity, with such that high dignity. So his having second thoughts of committing his crime, of committing of confessing that he had committed a sin or a crime. And then the other one is with Roger Chillingworth. It's between to plot revenge or to let Hester Prynne and Arthur Dimmesdale continue their love. So the last one is the man versus God. So Arthur Dimmesdale is a reverend, so it means he has this closer relationship with God, deeper relationship with God. So that faith of him was really tested in this story, whether to choose his reputation or his faith to God.
I am Joyce Tapales. I am here to report about the character web and the analysis of the major characters of the novel The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Hester Prynne is the novel's protagonist. Roger Chillingworth is the husband of Hester Prynne. Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale and Hester Prynne had an affair and had brought to light to Pearl. Governor Bellingham is an authority who judged Hester, and his sister is Mistress Higgins. I will now discuss with you the analysis of major characters. Hester Prynne. Hester Prynne is the novel's protagonist and the wearer of the Scarlet Letter. The letter, a patch of fabric in the shape of a letter A. It signifies that Hester is an adulterer. As a young woman, Hester Prynne married an elderly scholar named Roger Chillingworth, who sent her to America to live but never followed her. While waiting for him, she had an affair with a Puritan minister named Arthur Dimmesdale, after which she gave birth to Pearl. Hester Prynne is also passionate and strong. She endures years of shame. She also equals both of her lover and her husband in her intelligence and thoughtfulness.
Next is Roger Chillingworth. Roger Chillingworth is actually Hester's husband in disguise. Roger sent Hester to America to live while he settled his affairs in Europe. But because he is captured by Native Americans, he arrived belatedly in Boston and find his wife and her illegitimate child Pearl being displayed on the scaffold. He lusts for revenge and thus decides to stay in Boston despite his wife's betrayal and disgrace. Roger Chillingworth is a scholar who uses his knowledge to disguise himself as a physician, intent on discovering and tormenting the anonymous lover of Hester. Roger Chillingworth is self-absorbed and both physically and psychologically monstrous. His single-minded pursuit of retribution reveals him to be the most malevolent or hateful character in the story. Next is Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale. Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale is a young man who achieved fame in England as a theologian and then immigrated to America. In a moment of weakness, he and Hester became lovers. Although he will not confess it publicly, he is the father of Pearl. He deals with his guilt by tormenting himself physically and psychologically, developing a heart condition as a result. Dimmesdale is an intelligent and emotional man, and his sermons are thus masterpieces of eloquence and persuasiveness. His commitments to his congregation are in constant conflict with his feelings of sinfulness and need to confess. Next is Pearl. Hester's illegitimate daughter, Pearl, is a young girl with a moody, mischievous spirit and an ability to perceive things others do not. For example, she quickly discerns or notices the truth about her mother and Arthur Dimmesdale. She is wise, far beyond her years, frequently engaging in the ironic play having to do with her mother's Scarlet Letter. Next, I will discuss to you the plot of the story. Roger sent her wife to America while he settled his affairs in Europe, promising to go after her, for he will just finish some tasks. Years have passed. Roger didn't fulfill his promise that had resulted to Hester having the thought that he lost his husband in the sea. She met Arthur Dimmesdale, a young and eloquent minister of the town she went. Years passed by, having the knowledge that Hester is a beautiful and dignified woman. Arthur, having a deeper affection towards Hester, is not impossible. Their love brought life to Pearl. Hester's husband returns to town and pretends to be Roger Chillingworth, a physician with his plan to find Hester's lover. Roger quickly recognized Arthur as Hester's lover and harassed him for 7 years. Arthur is sick with guilt. Hester told Arthur about Roger and planned to settle back in England with Pearl. Arthur backs out of the plan and confesses his sin in front of everyone before dying because of his sickness. Chillingworth died and left all his possessions to Pearl. Pearl and Hester then got back to England. Hester, after so many years, returned to the colony and proudly continues to wear her letter. After some years, she eventually died and is buried next to Arthur with the letter A marked on her tomb. And that's the end of my report. Thank you for listening.
So while reading the story, we have seen 13 themes. Number 1 is sin. So from the 10 commandments, there is this commandment saying, thou shalt not commit adultery. So in this story, they committed adultery. Hester Prynne and then Arthur Dimmesdale. To clearly explain this, so from the start, Roger Chillingworth um, was gone for 2 years and then just came back to plot revenge and to know who who is the new lover of Hester Prynne and the father of Pearl. So that's the number 1 sin, adultery. So the number 2 sin is that having the grudge against another person, having that plotting revenge, having anger, keeping anger to another person, like just like what Roger Chillingworth committed. Because in the New Testament, we just have 2 commandments. Number 1 is love God above all, and then number 2 is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So Roger Chillingworth abided the number 2, the love your neighbor as you love yourself. He plotted revenge to Arthur Dimmesdale, and then he made him suffer for 7 years by being his physician, because Arthur Dimmesdale is sick, and that's the cause of his death in the scaffold. Not just because he did not commit suicide, it's because of his sickness, and it was made more grievous by Roger Chillingworth. So in the story, sin is very emphasized with the title, The Scarlet Letter. So the Scarlet Letter pertains to the letter A in that is being worn by Hester Prynne, and that is on the chest of Arthur Dimmesdale. That means adultery or adulterer. So number 2 theme is revenge. I have this saying, revenge is a two-edged sword. Once you inflicted pain or caused pain to another person, that reflects back to you. More grievous, worst. It will be worse than what you have the pain will be worse than what you have inflicted to another. So don't plot revenge. This is what is being told by the story. One of those messages of the story. Do not plot revenge. So that was made by Roger Chillingworth. But then, does revenge made him happy? No. It just made everything worse than what he is expecting. So, as what he have expected, because of revenge, he will be happy, but no, he didn't. Nothing happened after Arthur Dimmesdale death. After Arthur Dimmesdale's death, does anything does that revenge cost Roger Chillingworth any good? No, it doesn't. The third theme is society. So in our society today, it is really difficult to go with them. Everything you do is being judged. Everything you do, the society has comments with it. Everything's wrong in society. Whenever you act or do something good, the society will judge you negatively. So in this story, that concept was really emphasized. Arthur Dimmesdale is very scared to confess his sin because the society might judge him negatively as what he know. So, as what I have said earlier, in a Puritan government, the laws of God and the laws of the people are being treated the same. This too should always go along whenever a Puritan person talks, thinks, or say something. the rules are being strictly implemented. The society in this kind of community is very strict with these rules. The fourth theme is secrets. So we all have our own secrets. Some secrets are being shared to others, to our best friends, to our families, to our mothers and fathers, or any person. But then there are secrets that are just being shared with ourselves, admit it or not. With that 100% of secret, 10% of that is just by yourself. There's no, according to some studies, there is no person who isn't keeping a secret from anyone or from anybody. So, in this story, Arthur Dimmesdale kept his sin a secret. Reason? Because he doesn't want to be judged negatively. So, as a person, do you want to be judged because of committing something that made you happy? No. I know that being irreverent, Arthur Dimmesdale knows what's wrong, alright? But then, that sin made him happy. And with that, he cannot control himself. He goes with the flow. He goes with that, without calling of love, true love. Priest can't marry. Priest can't have a wife. But that made him happy. And that's what, but then, yes, of course, Hester Prynne makes Arthur Dimmesdale happy. But then, Arthur Dimmesdale's reputation also makes Arthur Dimmesdale happy. And with in this case, on the first part of the book, up to the middle, before Arthur Dimmesdale's death, Arthur Dimmesdale chose reputation before Hester Prynne. So I know you'll have some questions like, does Arthur Dimmesdale really love Hester Prynne? So we'll tell you later about that. So the next theme is feminism. So in this story, the date of publication of the story is when the very first congregation about feminism was held. So this book is relevant to what is happening in the society. So in this story, Hester Prynne didn't let the society dictate what she should do in her life. She didn't let the society dictate her personality, her lifestyle. She does his normal living, not minding what should the society think of her. And that is how she gained respect from the Puritan people. She didn't let them dictate who she is. He just became who she is, without thinking what could be those Puritan people be thinking of her. The theme is hypocrisy. So Arthur Dimmesdale became a hypocrite because he wants to remain his reputation. He wants to always be that reverend with high dignity, with that kind of respect, high respect for him. He doesn't want to lose that. He's being covered with he's being caged in the society, in the society's mind. Because for the society, for the Puritan government, for the Puritan people, he's a living saint, and he doesn't want to change that. And that is one of the conflicts of the story, as what I have told you. He was caged with the people's expectations of him. He let the society control who he is. let the society control what he wants and what he should do. And with that, it doesn't made him any better. It just made him worse than before. What could really be, what could really happen if ever Arthur Dimmesdale confessed his sin earlier? We doesn't know. Anybody doesn't know. But one thing's for sure. His reputation would be destroyed. But then his faith with God will be stronger and will remain. Because once you admit that you have sinned or you have committed a crime, a sin, that's what just when moving on enters. So in the story, the message of the story is to admit that you have sinned. Do not hide that you have sinned, because it just made anything. It will just make everything worse than what you have expected. So the next theme is isolation. So the Puritan community, this Puritan community is in the middle of wilderness. It's in the middle, the island, and then the Puritan government is in the middle, and then what is surrounding the Puritan government, the Puritan community, is a forest. This is where Hester Prynne and Pearl lives. So we could see that Puritan community is not open with anything that is acquainted with change, associated with change. This kind of community isn't open to anything that could change their beliefs, their laws. So that's what explains why they are being isolated, why they are isolating themselves from others. They don't accept visitors, they don't accept any foreign goods or people, because they fear that these goods or these people could change how would they interact with each other, how would they exercise their faith, how would they live normally. So isolation is one of the things that we have noted, because we have seen that isolation is, yes, a good thing, but then also a bad thing. We shouldn't isolate ourselves. We should be open for change, because change is the only constant thing in this world, and we should be open for it. Just like what is happening here in the Philippines. Filipinos are very open with change. That's why development is very susceptible for us. Development is really possible for us because we are open to anything that could change the way we are living. Next theme is guilt. So guilt was emphasized when Arthur Dimmesdale confessed his sin. He's being guilty of what he had done to Hester Prynne and Pearl. He hid them. He's very ashamed of that sin that he committed. And then the other one was when Roger Chillingworth gave all his possessions to Pearl. It's because of guilt. He's guilty of what he had done to Roger. Roger Chillingworth is guilty of what he have done to Arthur Dimmesdale. That is the father of Pearl. So he gave all he has to Pearl after his death. From reading the story, we have listed some immortal quotes that have touched our hearts and have somehow inspired us. Thou must gather thine own sunshine, I have none to give, by Hester Prynne. So, this statement was told by Hester Prynne to Pearl. As what we understood in this quote, Hester Prynne is telling Pearl to be independent, to learn how to stand in her own feet, to be not too dependent of those people that is surrounding her. Hester Prynne teaches Pearl that yes, life is unfair and you shouldn't trust anything or anyone but yourself and God. I'm not telling you that people aren't um people aren't deserving of the trust you're going to give. But then be careful of who are you going to trust. Because trusting too much could kill you harshly. So, yes, in this first quote, it teaches us to be independent, to not depend our happiness, to not depend our lives to how would the society dictates. We should have our own way with everything. So the next one is The Disease is What I Seem to Know, Yet Know It Not by Roger Chillingworth. Roger Chillingworth said this line when he's conversing with Arthur Dimmesdale, because he's acting like the physician, so he became a personal physician of Arthur Dimmesdale, and this is what Roger Chillingworth is telling Arthur Dimmesdale, because Arthur is asking what could be his disease, and Roger Chillingworth is telling this that the disease is what I seem to know, yet know it not. So diseases that does not exist physically, it also exists in our soul. So sins, committing sins and hiding it could be a disease of the soul that others won't know, just yourself. And if you will accept it, that disease will be healed. All we just need is acceptance, just to be able to heal ourselves and to came back to who we really is. The next is The Reason is Not Far to Seek. It Was My Folly and Thy Weakness by Roger Chillingworth. It states here that the reason for everything is just really simple. It's just us that makes things very complicated. So whenever we're finding solutions to our problems, let's just sit and look around us and we'll find the solution that we're seeking. It would fall away of its own nature or be transformed into something that should speak a different purport. So purport here means purpose. So Hester Prynne tells us that development and improvement is a matter of choice. You want to be a better person? It's your choice. You want to improve? It's your choice. Everything is your choice. God gave us the free will to choose those things that would help us be the better person or to attain that totality that we should attain. It's our choice to be transformed significantly just to be able to successfully portray our significant role here in our world. So, exchange this false life of thine for a true one by Hester Prynne. This statement was told by Hester Prynne to Arthur Dimmesdale. So, this statement just tells us that be yourself. Be yourself. In everything that you do, be yourself. Don't let the society dictate who you are. Don't be caged into the society's expectations of who you should be. Don't listen to what they are trying to tell you, of what they are trying to dictate, because you are you. Don't be too affected with what would others tell about you. with how would others judge you with the things that you do, think, say, because it's yourself. And one of the greatest achievement one could really achieve is to be her or himself in the midst of challenges and obstacles he or she will be facing. And I'm challenging you, our group are challenging you to be yourself in the midst of those hindrances and obstacles that would challenge your firmness, your strength as a person, on how strong you have become as the years goes by and as the obstacles pass by. On a field sable, the letter A gives. So in this statement, by Nathaniel Hawthorne, this is the last statement of the book of the story. It just tells us that we're all a disaster. And we should strive really hard. We should do our very best just to be the most beautiful disaster of all. Let us not be conquered of the darkness that is just behind us. Let us be the letter A that is shining very brightly, that is shining very beautifully of all. Be the most beautiful disaster of all. Yes, you're sinned. Yes, you're imperfect. But that imperfection of yours made you the most beautiful, the most complex art of all. That sin past of yours made the strongest foundation of who you are now and who will you become in the future. So be the most beautiful disaster of all.